The city looked like an ocean of cold blue glass from the 50th floor, each window a tiny mirror of a life Adrian Hale would never live. He sat on the black leather couch the way a tired king might sit on an empty throne, shirt unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up, whiskey trembling lightly in his hand from a fatigue that had nothing to do with work. Behind him, the rain tapped the floor-to-ceiling windows like someone trying to get his attention. But nothing ever got through to him anymore. Then the soft sound of the penthouse door closing broke the quiet. He did not look up at first. He already knew who it was. She always arrived at this exact moment, steady, reliable, like a clock that cared. Lena Moore. Her footsteps were gentle, respectful, almost apologetic. She wore the simple black and white uniform of a night maid, but somehow it never made her look small. Maybe it was her posture. Maybe it was the strange, quiet dignity she carried even when she thought no one saw her. Adrian finally lifted his eyes. She stood near the lamp, the warm light outlining her face, though she deliberately kept her gaze lowered, professional, distant. She always tried to be invisible, but to a man drowning in silence, her presence filled the entire room. "You can start in the study," Adrian said out of habit. His voice was rough, low, a voice unused to speaking to anyone after sundown. But tonight, he hesitated. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was the ache in his chest that had been throbbing since morning. Maybe it was the memory of his brother's laugh, faint, fading, almost gone now. Actually, his voice fractured for a moment. Stay? Just for a moment. It was the first time those words had escaped him. Lena froze. Her hands tightened around the cleaning cloth she carried, as if she were bracing herself for something. Anger, correction, dismissal. Men like him didn't ask for company. Men like him commanded silence. But when she looked up, she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Loneliness. Not the kind that comes from being isolated. The kind that comes from being surrounded by everything except what your heart actually needs. "Of course, sir," she said softly. "Just for a moment." She stepped closer, and the air in the penthouse shifted. Adrian didn't speak right away. He didn't have to. Her presence alone calmed the room. She moved slowly, gently straightening the items on the coffee table, wiping the glass surface with quiet care. Every small gesture was intentional, thoughtful, human. It had been a long time since anyone had done anything gently around him. "Rough day?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He almost laughed at the understatement. "The kind of day that makes you wonder why you're doing any of it," Adrian murmured. Lena nodded once, not prying, not reacting, just listening. And it stunned him. People usually wanted something from him: money, power, approval. But she gave him silence, space. A rare currency he never knew he needed. Her eyes drifted to the untouched sketches on the side table, his brother's memorial project he had not touched in months. She didn't comment. She simply placed them neatly, aligning the edges with gentle fingers. A small act, but it felt like she was putting part of his scattered world back into place. "You're always here at the same time," Adrian said suddenly. "Why?" She blinked, surprised. "Because it's my shift, sir." "No," he said, lowering his voice. "Why do you stay longer than you're paid for?" Lena's breath caught. She didn't know he noticed. For a moment, the rain filled the silence between them. Then she answered, barely audible. "Because no one should be alone all the time." It hit him harder than the whiskey. He stared at her, trying to understand why a stranger's kindness felt more familiar than anything he'd felt in years. And just like that, the room didn't feel so empty anymore. If this story moves you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Your support is what keeps this channel alive. Adrian exhaled, leaning back, studying the woman who unknowingly held the last warm corner of his cold world. "Lena," he said quietly, "stay a little longer." And for the first time since she started this job, she smiled. Lena had never intended to stay after finishing her cleaning checklist. Her life didn't allow extra minutes, let alone extra hours. Every second she spent here meant one less second she could take on another shift, one less chance to keep the bills from swallowing her whole. But when Adrian Hale asked her to stay, something inside her paused, like a clock skipping a beat. She didn't recognize the feeling, but she recognized the look in his eyes. People who hurt often looked the same, a little lost, a little tired, and holding on by a thread. So she stayed. The lamp beside her cast a golden ring around her silhouette as she stood near the couch, unsure whether stepping forward or stepping back was the right choice. Adrian set his whiskey down, resting his elbows on his knees, fingers interlaced. His posture said power, but his eyes said something else, something fragile. "You can sit," he murmured, not quite looking at her. Lena blinked. She wasn't sure she heard him correctly. Maids didn't sit. Maids didn't share space. They didn't breathe too loudly in a penthouse like this. But he wasn't giving an order. He was asking, and that alone disarmed her. She approached slowly and sat on the opposite couch, back straight, hands folded in her lap. The distance between them was polite, but the emotional gap was shrinking by the second. Adrian leaned back, studying her under the warm light. "You're not afraid of me," he said quietly. Lena tilted her head. "Should I be? Most people are." He lifted his glass, but didn't drink. "They treat me like I'm a storm. Like one wrong word will make me rip the room apart." "You don't seem like a storm," she answered softly. "Just tired." For a moment, he didn't breathe. No one had spoken to him like that in years, with honesty instead of fear, compassion instead of calculation. He let out a sound that was almost a laugh, almost a sigh. "Tired," he repeated, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "That's accurate." Lena glanced around. The penthouse was immaculate, expensive, curated, yet everything felt untouched and used. Like a museum built around someone who had forgotten how to live inside it. Her gaze drifted to the sketchbook on the side table. The half-finished drawings looked like they were reaching for something beyond the page, something their owner no longer had the strength to finish. "You draw?" she asked gently. Adrian's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward the sketchbook, then away, as if the sight burned him. "My brother did," he murmured. "He was the artist. I just tried to keep up." Lena's breath hitched. He died," Adrian said, voice low. 2 years ago. Car accident." He paused, swallowing a bitterness even. Whiskey couldn't dilute. "After that, I stopped drawing. Stopped doing a lot of things." Silence wrapped around them. Not heavy, just honest. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You don't have to say that." "I want to." Adrian looked at her again, this time without the armor of sarcasm or distance. "You're different." She raised a brow. "Different how?" "You don't look at me like I'm a headline or a dollar sign. You don't flinch when I speak. You don't try to impress me. You just," he searched for the word, "exist. Like a person." Lena felt something warm rise in her chest, dangerously warm. She forced a small, professional smile. "Well, being a person is free. I can afford that." He chuckled, a soft sound, rough from disuse. "You say that like the world hasn't tried to take it from you." Her eyes flickered. He noticed. "What about you?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "Why are you working 3 jobs?" She stiffened. "How did you?" "You always arrive exhausted," he said simply. "And your hands," he nodded toward them. "They're the hands of someone who carries more than they should." Lena instinctively curled her fingers into her palms. "It's nothing," she muttered. "Everything," he corrected. A beat passed. "Finally," she said, "my mom's medication is expensive. I'm the only one who can cover it. That's all." Adrian didn't pity her. He didn't gasp, or offer money, or say empty words. He simply nodded, quiet understanding. Respect. It was the only reaction that didn't make her feel small. "You know," she said after a moment. "Talking like this, it isn't part of my job description." "Maybe not," Adrian replied softly. "But it's the first real conversation I've had in months." Their eyes met. Something unspoken, fragile, and real sparked between them. A connection born not of romance, not of need, but of 2 tired souls recognizing each other in the dark. Lena stood reluctantly as her shift neared its end. "I should go? If I miss the last bus, I'll be walking home." Adrian rose slowly, almost instinctively wanting to walk her to the door. But he stopped himself. Habit, pride, loneliness wrestling inside him. "Lena." She turned at the sound of her name. "Will you come back tomorrow night?" She smiled, small, soft, and real. "Of course. It's my shift." He shook his head once. "That's not what I meant." Her breath stilled. But she didn't ask. What he meant. She didn't have to. Because she would return. And both of them knew it. Tomorrow night, the penthouse wouldn't feel quite as empty. The next night, Lena arrived at the penthouse with the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, the atmosphere wouldn't feel as heavy as it always did. But when she stepped inside, she sensed immediately that something had shifted. Not wrong. Just different. The lights were dimmer than usual, warmer. A soft instrumental track played in the background, piano, slow and reflective. The rain was gone, replaced by a clear night sky that glittered against the windows like splintered diamonds. Adrian stood near the kitchen counter, sleeves rolled up, a mug in his hand. Coffee, not whiskey. When he looked up and saw her, a small breath left him, as if he'd been holding it without realizing. "You're early," he said. "You're awake," she replied. "And not drinking." He smirked. "Progress." She set down her cleaning supplies, and for a brief second, the two simply stood there, taking in each other's presence with a familiarity neither could logically justify. Tonight, she started with the living room, humming under her breath. She didn't mean to. It was a habit she developed when working late shifts to make the hours feel shorter. But the sound carried through the penthouse, soft and gentle. Adrian listened from the counter, his head tilted slightly, like he was hearing something precious, something he didn't want to interrupt. "You always hum when you work?" he asked. She startled a little. "Oh, sorry. I didn't realize." "Don't apologize," he murmured. "It makes this place feel alive." Her cheeks warmed unexpectedly. She bent down to pick up a few books from the floor, but before she could set them down, Adrian appeared beside her. "I can take those." She blinked. "You want to help me clean?" His expression softened. "I want to understand the things that keep you grounded." No one had ever said something like that to her. They worked together in quiet harmony, Lena dusting the shelves, Adrian carefully straightening loose papers, both pretending they didn't feel how close their hands occasionally came. Each time their fingers almost touched, something electric rippled between them. But neither acknowledged it. Not yet. At one point, Lena paused in front of a framed photo partially hidden behind a stack of financial documents. She would have ignored it, respecting his privacy, but the image caught her attention. Two boys sitting on the hood of an old car, laughing like the world was simple and theirs. "You were close?" she asked softly. Adrian followed her gaze. The smile faded from his eyes, replaced by something heavier. "He was my little brother," he said. "Elliot." Lena swallowed gently. "You look happy there." "We were." He hesitated. "I forget sometimes what it felt like to laugh like that." Lena turned toward him. "Maybe you don't have to forget." Something in him cracked, quietly, invisibly, but she felt it. He stepped away first, retreating toward the window as if needing distance to breathe. The city glowed below him in soft golds and deep blues, a living thing he watched from a kingdom of glass. She approached slowly. "You okay?" He didn't answer right away. His fingers curled against the window frame, knuckles white. "People think loneliness happens when you're alone," he said. "But there were days, even when Elliot was alive, when I felt like I was disappearing inside my own life." Lena exhaled softly. "You're not disappearing." His jaw clenched. "I was. Until you walked in." The confession hung in the air between them, raw, fragile, astonishingly sincere. Lena's breath stilled. She wasn't supposed to get close. She wasn't supposed to feel something. But hearing that, feeling the weight of it, it stirred something in her she hadn't named in years. Something like hope. Something like warmth. Something like danger. Before she could respond, the sound of her phone buzzing broke the moment. She glanced at the screen, her mother's clinic reminding her of an overdue payment. Panic flickered across her face before she forced her expression back to neutral. Adrian didn't miss it. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," she replied too quickly. "Lena." He said her name with quiet authority, but not unkindness. "You're a terrible liar." She closed her eyes, shoulders sagging. "I can't afford my mom's medication this month. They keep raising the price, and I keep working more and somehow making less." Adrian stepped closer. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it isn't your problem." Her voice trembled. "And I don't want to be someone looking for a rich man to fix her life." His eyes softened with respect, not pity. "Let me help," he offered gently. "I can't." She shook her head. "If I take money from you, everything between us changes." "There is something between us?" he asked quietly. She froze. Adrian's voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "Because every night you're here, I feel like I can breathe again." Her heart thudded against her ribs. But before she could answer, a sharp knock shattered the moment. A man in a tailored suit stepped into the penthouse without waiting for permission. CFO. Ravenwood security badge. Cold eyes scanning Lena like she didn't belong. "Mr. Hale," he said stiffly. We need to discuss the breach in your household protocol. Adrian stiffened. What breach? The man's gaze slid back to Lena. Her stomach dropped. Something was very, very wrong. The man who entered the penthouse moved with the confidence of someone who believed every room belonged to him. His suit was sharp, charcoal gray, crisp as if the fabric itself feared disappointing him. His expression held no warmth, only calculation. Lena immediately stepped back, instinct tightening in her chest. Adrian straightened, authority clicking back into place like a steel door slamming shut. Gregory, he said coolly. I don't recall asking you to come up here. Gregory Dalton, Chief Financial Officer of Hale Industries and the man responsible for managing Adrian's private security protocols, ignored the remark. His gaze locked onto Lena like she was a smudge he intended to wipe off the glass. There's a problem, Gregory said, and it concerns your employee. She has a name, Adrian snapped, and she's standing right here. Lena felt a surge of gratitude and fear. She'd never seen Adrian's expression shift so quickly or so protectively. But Gregory only smirked, unimpressed. Then perhaps Miss Moore can explain, he said, why her signature appears on a confidential household surveillance agreement. Lena blinked, stunned. My what? Gregory held up a printed document. Her name, Lena Moore, was stamped across the signature line. The logo at the top was Ravenwood Security, the partner company that handled Adrian's building access, privacy, and internal safety protocols. Except she had never signed anything except her hourly employment form. Adrian's eyes narrowed dangerously. Explain, he said, but the edge in his voice wasn't pointed at her. It was pointed at the man beside him. Lena stepped forward anyway, shaking her head. I've never seen that paper in my life. Gregory tooted. Of course you did. It was part of your hiring packet. No, she insisted, pulse racing. My hiring packet only had two forms, employment contract and non-disclosure. Nothing else. Gregory raised a brow as if amused. So you're saying, we forged your signature? The accusation twisted in the air like smoke. Lena felt her throat tighten. No. I'm saying someone else. Someone must have. Adrian cut in, voice low and dangerous. She doesn't lie. Gregory didn't flinch. He looked at Adrian the way a man might look at someone blinded by sentiment. With respect, sir, that is exactly what a compromised employee would say. His gaze slid back to Lena. She has access to your private floors, your schedules, your personal belongings. If she recorded or leaked any of it, Adrian stepped between them. That's enough. But Gregory wasn't done. He tapped the document. This agreement states Miss Moore was paid to observe and report behavioral patterns. Lena's heart dropped. I would never, she cried. Adrian believed her. She could see it in his face, but something cold began creeping into his eyes. Not doubt. Fear. Fear of what this document meant. Fear of who might be behind it. Let me see that, Adrian demanded. Gregory handed him the paper, smugness lingering behind his lenses. Adrian scanned the page, jaw tightening with every line. The signature was an almost perfect match, but the date was wrong. It was supposedly signed before Lena even applied for the job. Something was deeply, intentionally manipulated. Lena swallowed the rising panic. Adrian, I swear, I never signed anything like that. Someone is trying to, I know. His voice softened for her, but only for a moment. Then Steele replaced it. He turned to Gregory. Who gave her this form? Gregory shrugged. It came from Ravenwood Intake. Standard protocol for staff with night access. That's a lie, Adrian growled. Ravenwood never requests behavioral reporting on domestic employees. Ever. Gregory's mask slipped for half a second. Just enough. Adrian caught it. You did this, he said quietly, realization dawning like a knife's edge. You coordinated this. Gregory didn't deny it, just folded his arms. I am protecting the company, Mr. Hale. You've been distracted lately. Vulnerable. And that makes all of us vulnerable. Lena's stomach twisted. Distracted? Was she the distraction? Gregory continued, speaking over the weight in the room. Your emotional instability is already being noticed by board members. Your decisions have been erratic. Pulling out of projects. Delaying approvals. Spending long hours in isolation. He paused. Then she appeared. Adrian's face darkened. Watch your mouth. Gregory raised both hands innocently. I'm not accusing. I'm simply pointing out a pattern. She arrives. You deteriorate. You confide in a maid instead of your executives. That is not sustainable, nor is it wise. Lena felt tears sting her eyes, not from shame, but from the way Gregory stripped her existence down to a liability. She whispered, "I'm not trying to hurt you." Adrian turned to her instantly. "I know." But Gregory pressed one more blade into the wound. "Feelings," he said, "make men like you weak." Adrian snapped. "Get out." Gregory didn't argue, didn't apologize. He simply left the document on the table, glanced coldly at Lena, then walked toward the elevator with a self-satisfied smirk. The penthouse door shut. Silence swallowed the air. Lena stood frozen. Adrian slowly turned to her, document trembling in his hand. "Lena," he whispered. Why would someone do this?" "I don't know," she said shakily. "But I didn't betray you. I believe you." His voice cracked. "God, I believe you." But beneath his words, she saw the fear, the guilt, the weight of a man who had already lost someone he loved and couldn't risk losing again. Her heart broke. "Adrian," she whispered, voice breaking, "I should leave for tonight. Let things settle." "No." He reached out, stopped himself, let his hand fall. She stepped back anyway. "Good night, Adrian." And for the first time since she entered his life, she walked out. Lena didn't remember the elevator ride down. She didn't remember the lobby or the cold air that rushed against her cheeks as she stepped outside. All she remembered was the look in Adrian's eyes. Fear, confusion, heartbreak stitched into the blue of them. She didn't blame him, but it still hurt. She reached the bus stop, clutching her bag against her chest. Around her, the city thrived with noise and light, but none of it reached her. She sat on the metal bench, letting the ache inside settle as quietly as the night around her. A few blocks away, Adrian stood frozen in his penthouse, hand pressed against the window, as if he could somehow feel the echo of her absence. Gregory's words throbbed in the back of his skull. "You deteriorate when she's here. She is a liability. She arrived. You changed." He had changed. He knew it. He wasn't sure if it was good or bad. All he knew was that Lena had become a piece of quiet in a life filled with storms, and the thought of losing that terrified him. He picked up the forged document again. The fake signature stared back at him, taunting him. He ran a thumb over the paper, jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Someone did this on purpose. He grabbed his phone and called Ravenwood Security. "This is Adrian Hale," he said sharply. "I need to verify a personnel signature." After a few minutes of back and forth, the agent on the line confirmed exactly what he feared. "No maid was ever issued a behavioral surveillance agreement, sir. And no document bearing that name or signature exists in our system." Adrian's grip tightened. Gregory had lied. Gregory had forged it. But why? He didn't sleep that night. He paced the penthouse, checking every corner, every camera. At one point he found himself in the study, staring at the half-finished sketches of Elliot. "What would you tell me?" he whispered. And somehow, in the stillness, he knew the answer. Go after the truth. The next morning, Adrian walked into his own corporate headquarters like a storm disguised in a suit. His presence usually commanded respect. Today, it commanded fear. He marched straight into Gregory's office without knocking. Gregory looked up from his computer with an artificial smile. "Mr. Hale, to what do I owe?" Adrian tossed the forged document onto his desk. "Explain." Gregory's smile didn't falter, but something in his eyes flickered. "It's a precautionary protocol. I told you, you forged her signature," Adrian growled. Ravenwood confirmed it. Gregory's expression cooled. "Sir, I made a decision in the best interest of the company. You've been compromised emotionally. You're placing value on an employee you barely know." "I know enough." Gregory leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Your brother was emotional too. Look where that got him." Adrian slammed his hands on the table. "Don't you dare speak his name." The CFO didn't flinch. "I'm trying to prevent you from burning down everything you built." "You crossed the line," Adrian said sharply. "You invaded my home. You manipulated my staff. You lied to me. And I'd do it again," Gregory said calmly. "Because you're not thinking clearly." Adrian stared at him for a long moment, jaw tight. Then he said the words cold as steel. "You're fired." Effective immediately. Gregory's face twisted. "You can't be serious. Security will escort you out." As if summoned, two guards appeared. In the doorway, Gregory's mask finally cracked. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "That woman is dangerous. She'll ruin you." Adrian straightened his suit jacket. The only one who tried to ruin me is standing in front of me. Gregory was dragged out, shouting threats that faded down the hallway. Underscore that evening, Adrian stood in front of the same window where Lena had seen him vulnerable. The city glowed beneath him, but it felt colder now. He whispered into the quiet, "I need to fix this." But somewhere across the city, Lena was packing her small backpack in her apartment, blinking back tears. She didn't want to leave the job. She didn't want to leave him. But she didn't want to be the reason his life fell apart either. For the first time since she'd entered his world, she didn't know if she'd ever return. 3 days passed. 3 days with no late-night humming. No soft footsteps in the penthouse hallway. No warm presence folding itself into the quiet of the room. Adrian felt every hour like a bruise. His assistants noticed. His board noticed. Even the receptionist downstairs noticed. When had he last smiled? No one knew. They just knew the man walking the halls of Hale Industries looked like a ghost wearing $1 million suit. He couldn't focus. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't forget the look on her face when she said she should leave. By the 4th night, he broke. He grabbed his keys and left the penthouse without telling anyone where he was going. He drove across the city, passing neighborhoods he had forgotten existed. Places with flickering streetlights, cracked sidewalks, tiny apartments stacked like weary dominoes. He found her building easily after checking the payroll directory. He hesitated at the entrance. The elevator was broken, so he climbed 4 flights of stairs, each one echoing with the same question. What if she doesn't want to see me? Outside her door, he heard faint coughing. A woman's voice. Her mother. He swallowed and knocked gently. The door opened halfway. Lena appeared, eyes tired, hair pulled into a loose bun, wearing a worn t-shirt. She froze when she saw him. Adrian. Her voice cracked like a fragile thing. He exhaled. Relief, guilt, longing all tangled together. Can we talk? She stepped aside, letting him in. The apartment was small, clean, but suffocatingly humble. A single lamp lit the living room. Her mother lay sleeping on the sofa, bundled in blankets, her breathing shallow. Lena lowered her voice. She's been sick all week. He nodded, heart twisting. Lena, I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize, she whispered. You didn't forge anything. But I let him get into your life. I let him hurt you. Her eyes softened with sadness. He hurt you too. He looked around the apartment, seeing every detail, the peeling paint, the thin walls, the anxious way Lena glanced at her mother. He realized then how much she carried, how much she hid behind her quiet strength. You shouldn't have to live like this, he murmured. She stiffened. Don't pity me. I don't, he said immediately. I admire you. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Why? She whispered. Because you face things people like me never had to. And you still walk into a room with more grace than anyone I've ever met. Her breath hitched. No one had ever spoken to her like that. He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. I fired Gregory, he said quietly. Lena's eyes widened. Adrian, you didn't. I did, he said firmly. He crossed a line, and he was afraid of how much you meant to me. The words landed between them like a heartbeat. Mean to you? She whispered. He nodded once. Yes. Silence. Her lips trembled. Adrian, I don't want to get in the way of your life. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. You're the reason I haven't completely lost myself. Her chest tightened. She turned away, pacing toward the window. Her voice trembled. This is too much. Too fast. Too dangerous. Your world is big. Mine is small. It doesn't matter. It does, she insisted. People like you don't end up with people like me. Adrian stepped behind her, his reflection beside hers in the glass. Him in a tailored coat, her in worn clothes, 2 worlds colliding. He said softly, maybe that's exactly why it works. But before she could respond, her mother started coughing violently in the next room. Lena rushed to her. Adrian stood frozen for a moment. Then something in him snapped into clarity. Lena, he said gently. Let me help. She shook her head. I can't keep taking from you. You're not taking, he said. I'm giving. And what if one day you regret it? He reached for her hand, barely touching, but enough. I regret every day you weren't in my life. She looked at him, eyes shimmering. Adrian. He understood then. The only way forward was to prove, not say, that she wasn't a liability. She wasn't a distraction. She was the only part of his life that felt real, and he would prove it, no matter the cost. Adrian didn't wait another day. The next morning, he called his lawyers, his board, and his private medical team. Within hours, Lena's mother was transferred, quietly, respectfully, to one of the best private clinics in the city. Lena insisted on riding in the ambulance, her hands gripping her mother's as she whispered reassurances. Adrian followed behind in his car, eyes locked on the flashing lights ahead. At the clinic, the nurses greeted them, already briefed. Lena watched, shocked, as her mother was wheeled into a private room equipped with oxygen support, monitors, and gentle lighting. "None of this is necessary," Lena said, turning toward Adrian, voice tight. "You didn't have to do all this." "I know," he replied calmly. "I wanted to. But it's too much." "No," Adrian said. "Too much is what Gregory did. Too much is what you've been carrying alone for years. This," he gestured toward the room, "this is the bare minimum you deserve." Lena's throat tightened, emotions swelling painfully. A doctor approached with updates, and when he walked away, Adrian stood beside her at the window overlooking the city. "You don't have to decide anything now," he said quietly. "Not about me. Not about us. I just want you to breathe." The weight of his words pressed into her chest. She whispered, "I don't know how to be anything in your world." He smiled gently. "You already are." She turned to him, eyes wet, voice trembling. "Why me?" "Because," he said, "every night you walked into my life and gave me back pieces of myself I thought were gone forever." Her breath broke. Adrian reached out, slowly, giving her room to move away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek, feather-light. "Lena, I'm falling for you." She closed her eyes, not ready for the world to hear those words from him. When she opened them, her voice was a whisper. "I'm scared. I am too. But your world is dangerous," she said. "Powerful. People would tear me apart. Just for being near you." "Then let me stand in front of you," he replied softly. "Let me shield you from all of it." Her heart broke open in her chest. But before she could respond, her mother stirred in the bed, calling her name faintly. Lena rushed to her side, holding her hand, whispering comfort. Adrian watched from the doorway, and in that moment, watching Lena's gentleness, her strength, her devotion, he realized something that stole his breath. He didn't just care about her. He loved her. But love, he knew, wasn't enough. He would have to prove he would never let her face the world alone. 2 days later, as Lena cared for her mother at the clinic, Adrian's world erupted. Gregory had returned, with lawyers, media contacts, and a folder of fabricated evidence accusing Adrian of corporate negligence, emotional instability, and unethical private entanglements with staff. A thinly veiled attack, aimed directly at Lena. Adrian's board called an emergency meeting. When he arrived, the room buzzed with whispers. Executives avoided eye contact. Papers were stacked on the long conference table, accusations, photos, timelines twisted into lies. Gregory stood at the head of the room like a snake that had finally tasted blood. "Mr. Hale," he said with false politeness, "your situation has jeopardized the stability of this company." "The only thing jeopardizing this company," Adrian replied, "is you." Gregory smirked. "The board disagrees." Board member Finch leaned forward. "Adrian, the optics are terrible." "A maid? Emotional outbursts? For God's sake, you fired your CFO for doing his job. Forging signatures is his job?" Adrian shot back. Finch slammed a hand on the table. "Do you have proof?" Adrian hesitated. Ravenwood's confirmation was verbal, not written. And Gregory knew it. Gregory leaned in. "He doesn't. Because it's his word against mine." The board murmured in agreement. Finch continued. "Unless you step down temporarily, the company will pursue formal suspension." Adrian's jaw clenched. "So that's your plan, Gregory? Destroy me from the inside?" Gregory smiled. "You did that yourself. All because of a girl." Adrian didn't blink. "She is not just a girl." The board groaned. Gregory smirked wider. Finch shook his head. "This is exactly the problem. Your judgment is compromised. You're risking billions for a woman who saved me," Adrian said firmly. "From drowning in grief. From becoming the empty man you all pretend to admire." The room went silent. Adrian scanned their faces. These people had been with him for years, but none of them knew him. Not truly. Lena did. In a few nights, she had seen more of him than they ever would. He took a slow breath. "If protecting her costs me power," he said, then I never deserved power to begin with. The room erupted in outrage. Gregory slammed a folder onto the table. You're finished. Adrian stepped closer, voice low and lethal. No, he said. You are. Security guards entered the room. Gregory paled. What is this? Adrian handed them a new file, signed, stamped, and notarized by Ravenwood's legal team. Proof of the forgery. Proof of misconduct. Proof of Gregory's plot. The board members gasped. Gregory stumbled back. You forged federal security documents, Adrian said calmly. That's prison time. As the guards dragged Gregory out, his voice echoed down the hall. She'll ruin you. Just wait. But Adrian didn't flinch. He walked out of the boardroom, straight into the elevator, straight into the car, straight back to Lena. By the time Adrian returned to the clinic, Lena was sitting beside her mother's bed, softly brushing her hair. The room smelled of lavender disinfectant and quiet hope. She looked up when he entered. Something in his face, determination, relief, something almost fierce, made her stand instinctively. What happened? She asked. It's over, he said simply. She frowned. What do you mean? He stepped forward, taking her hands gently. Gregory, the lies, the attacks, the threat to you, all of it, it's over. He's gone. Permanently. Her breath caught. Adrian, that could destroy your company. It didn't, he said softly. Because I finally chose to fight for the right things. Her eyes widened. You chose me. I chose truth, he corrected gently. And the truth is, I want you in my life. Not as an employee, not as someone in the shadows, as someone who matters. Her heartbeat quickened painfully. Adrian. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, rectangular object. Her breath stilled. It was the sketchbook, his brother's. But when he opened it, the pages weren't empty. Each one revealed charcoal portraits of Lena, soft, candid, breathtakingly human. The way she looked when she hummed. The way she tilted her head when listening. The way she smiled faintly without noticing. Her knees almost buckled. You drew these? She whispered. Yes. His voice was barely a breath. Because you brought life back into a part of me I thought was dead. A tear slipped down her cheek. Adrian cupped her face gently, wiping it away with his thumb. Lena Moore, I don't want a penthouse without your footsteps. I don't want a night without your voice. I don't want a life without you in it. She exhaled shakily. I'm scared of losing you. He smiled softly. Then don't. Her mother stirred slightly, murmuring Lena's name. Lena glanced back, then returned her gaze to him. If I say yes, she whispered, you have to promise me one thing. Anything. You won't shut me out when things get hard. Adrian leaned his forehead against hers. Never again. She closed her eyes. And finally, after nights of hovering near each other, after lies and fear and storms, they met halfway. Not in a kiss. Not yet. But in an embrace so full, so human, it felt like the world exhaled. The city glowed outside the window. The clinic lights hummed softly. And Adrian whispered into her hair. You gave me back my heart, Lena. Let me spend the rest of my life earning yours. She held him tighter. And for the first time in years, they both felt home.